Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. I'm going to tell you about the very first time that I was ever scammed or conned with something that I purchased. And that was the first and last time. Have you ever heard of aqua monkeys? Or sea monkeys? Well, I was a sucker. I mean, I was a very young child when this happened, but I saw an advertisement for sea monkeys and there was illustrations of these creatures. All you had to do was purchase this special powder, this special dust, and sprinkle it into your aquarium or a bowl of water. And before long, these sort of sea creatures would emerge that looked like monkeys. They had the adorable face of monkeys, but legs kind of like frogs, and they would dart about and you'd be the envy of all friends. And I remember being particularly excited and exercised about it. I really was, and I asked Mummy and Daddy, and they said, well, if you want it, you can pay for it. You can pay for it, my dear. So I did my chores, I saved up for weeks on end, and eventually sent off for the things. And that was cherished money, that sort of pocket money, my dear. Cherished it was, but I thought that I was spending it well. Of course. Several weeks later, through the post, this sachet of dust arrived. I sprinkled it on some water. The whole thing went murky, and eventually there seemed to be bugs squirming about in the mix if one held up a magnifying glass to the glass. Bugs. Brine shrimps they were, brine shrimps, and I can tell you they did not look anything like the illustration. Am I the only one that got fooled by this? As I say, I was a young child, but I was broken-hearted, totally broken-hearted and dejected, and I couldn't believe that someone would lie to me so. You know, the innocence of youth, you don't realise, do you? But it stood me in good stead, because I swore never again would anybody pull the knickerbockers over my eyes. No, my dear, and that is why I'm on the lookout, and why I, like many of you, don't buy what they're selling. Do you know what I mean? We don't buy that sort of mischief, whether it's aqua monkeys or the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. We can figure it out. And I mention this to you because it is, of course, festive season approaching, even though we're scarce at Halloween yet, but you know, festive season on the way. This is the time when you've got to be completely on the lookout for scams and cons, especially when buying online. Also, you should know this, my dears, but I will give a warning because I've got a large audience. Look out for emails and calls from banks. I had one yesterday coming through. It looked very official, but I knew it wasn't because it had it was asking me to go and click and follow links. Don't. If you get an email, just either delete it or forward it on to your bank's scamming department, whatever. Always contact your bank directly and ask them and check. Did you email me? Have you sent this to me? Are you calling me through their own official number? You know, I'm sorry to be a stickler, my dear, but lots of people are being affected by this. Even one of my own parents recently, who is very savvy and actually knows what's what, they're getting super masterminded at grabbing us all. Anyway, I saw something popping up all over the internet, a Christmas item, and the reason I'm mentioning it's ubiquitous because it's popping up. I've seen it on about 10 different websites. I've seen it on social media. This charming photo of a collection of books stacked against each other, creating a soft glow of lamplight. Looks lovely, doesn't it? Would look rather fetching over there in the corner. Well, I knew, my dear, please don't get me wrong, I knew immediately that it was a scam because they'd marked it as on various websites different prices, but on some for £60, going for half price at £30, which was pushing it as it was. But that was the first red flag. But there were many red flags because they were popping up all over the place. Well, I decided I was going to order it anyway. And I ordered it through a website where I was 99% sure that I could get a refund if I demanded one. And no one's ever refused me a refund that I've requested because I know how to request it. And that firstly, you've got to be very eloquent and ruthless and demanding about it if you are justly deserved of a refund, but also, if needs be, threaten media. You know, this is if you are in the right and if you have experienced a sort of sleight of hand or a misrepresentation, threaten media. Anyway, I ordered it. I clicked to order from a website, this book lamp affair, and it had said that it would only take 2 or 3 days to arrive, that it was from a handcrafted company based in the United Kingdom. I knew that it wasn't, and my suspicions were justified when I saw the tracking and the shipping arrangements from China. If I want something from China, I'll go to China. I get half my headbands from China, dear. Got no problem with that. But don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, my dear. because I won't stand for it. Don't pee on my leg and tell me anything. Anyway, they tried to, and well, you've seen what it looks like in the brochures, the materials, the promotionals. This is what it actually looks like. Yes, my dear, this is the object. And if it looks good on camera, trust me, it is not. It is something that you might pay for a fiver for. You might pay a fiver for at a push at somewhere like the pound shop, but even there the quality doesn't compare. Now, it did illuminate the first couple of times that I used it, and it's still got a very faint illumination, but it's temperamental. Normally you would be able to see it glowing, but it's just sort of gingerly flickering now, so it's not even working. So please do not rush out and buy this, I'm begging you. I did think that perhaps it might look good as a little prop in the background for 1 or 2 broadcasts, but it's not even worth doing that. It won't even light up now, my dear. So, as I say, I sent a very, very stern email to the seller reprimanding them and threatening exposure, and I was refunded within 5 minutes, my dear, so they're not going to mess with me. And it's given me something to chat about on the broadcast. So, you know, if you're given omelettes, no, if you're given eggs, then you make the omelette, don't you, my dear? And that's what I'm serving you. So, yeah, keep your wits about you and watch out. And I am also going to take the opportunity where, while we're talking about not buying what they're selling, I'm going to take the opportunity to enjoy making a little point. And this is only to a very small minority of viewers. There was a small contingency when I was speaking about Harry's book Spare, and I was speaking about what I know from my contacts, not only in the publishing world, but at Random Penguins itself. Because there was a time when I was housed under the same offices that Random Penguins were housed in for a time. And I happen to have a lot of contacts from that world. And what I was telling you is that whether you like it or not, it is not unusual for books to be slashed to half price before they're even released. And some potty viewers were mistaking this as some sort of sugary thing to say, and didn't like hearing it, and didn't like hearing that the plan worked, the strategy for Spare worked very well. And despite the fact that I am not naive and know there are some dodgy book lists and charts out of there, it was a huge, huge hit. It made Harry a lot of money. It made a lot of people a lot of money. And as they say, it was the fastest selling non-fiction book in history, or whatever they said. Well, that is until this week, because Miss Britney Spears, of course, has released her tome, and it's the fastest selling non-fiction book in history, so she tells us. Now, I haven't checked all this, so, you know, I'm taking her word for it, what they're saying in the press, so, you know, don't get aggy with me, my dear. The woman in me, she has released to the world. The woman in me. Oh, she stole the title of my memoir, dear. How dare you, Brittany, love? Oh, Brittany G. The highest selling celebrity memoir in history by day one, so she says. And all over the promotions, you will see, as is totally normal practice, my dear, for many, many types of books, not just memoirs, 40% discounts everywhere. And I don't think this is Random Penguins. 40% discount before it was released, all over Amazon, everywhere. Waterstones here in the Kingdom was going, well, slashed from £25 to £12.50, but it never really is presented to anyone at £25. It is a marketing tactic, a ploy, just like they use for the suckers that go out and buy this lamp and seriously think they're getting something worth £50. Slashed on a special, £60, slashed to £30 or whatever it is, my dear, when it's worth about twopence. It's the oldest trick in the book. Some people didn't want to hear it back at the time. Well, now they can see with Brittany, it's exactly the same course of action. That's what they do. It makes people think that they're getting a wonderful, marvellous deal from the offering and they rush out to buy it. But if this is true, number 2 again. Oh, he's number 2 again. And I almost feel just a little smidge of sympathy for the boy, because at last he was number 1. At last he was the number 1 non-fiction fastest seller. The best memoir in the world. Well, Recollections vary, my dear, and you are now two again. You really are the spare again. And not just to a king or a queen, but to a queen of pop. Britney Spears, who didn't even have to employ J.R. Mooringer. I don't know who her ghostwriter was, but as far as I know, it wasn't Mooringer. A pop queen. He was feeling all special until his crown was nabbed. Well, that is what you get, Harry. That is what you get, dear boy. Pride comes before a fall. And I don't know if he was proud to see that he's been featured on a television programme again. Some animation, this time it was Family Guy. Now, some of you would have seen this, and it made a lot of headlines. There was a silly sketch as part of Family Guy. I've never watched Family Guy. I'm not into that kind of thing. Now, the South Park thing, the privacy tour, that was very well realised and well observed, and so it was rather funny. I have to say, I didn't find this sketch amusing at all. I just sat there poker-faced and straight-faced. I don't think it was well written. You know, it was very quick. It was a flash in the pan. But I did rather like the expression of Harry. It didn't look anything like Meghan, but it did rather resemble Harry, didn't it? A little bit generous with the dandelion affair, the red halo, but the face, they got that rather irked grimace of his rather well, didn't they? But no, I didn't find it especially funny, but it did hammer home their grift to the world, which is always satisfying and always very welcome. Did you see the Princess Royal today? She was an absolute knockout, and I know I say this quite a lot, but I really mean it today. This photograph elevated the look. It really did. It was the grey that was elevated with a splash of orange. That's what took it up in leaps and bounds, plus the shiny leather of the gloves, and plus the Princess Cosy boots. And she was at an ice cream parlour. Yummy, yummy, yum, my absolute favourite. I do love ice cream. Ice cream for ice cream. Ooh, I love cherry chocolate. Well, I like anything when it comes to... I'm going to get exercised. This family, the Equis ice cream in Lanarkshire, have been making ice cream since 1922. Wow, they must be rather bored, mustn't they, after 101 years of doling out ice cream. Anyway, they were there to tell Princess Anne about their fundraising efforts for Maggie's. So that was lovely. And there was more fancy clothing on display at Buckingham Palace because their Majesties hosted a reception in aid of Kenya. You know, they've got the Kenya state visit coming up next week. Well, they welcome members of the UK Kenyan community to celebrate 60 years of independence and look ahead to the state visit next week, as I say. It was a riot of colour and style. Now, I really do think that unlike the likes of Ngozi Fulani, who was dragged up in a very inauthentic kind of pretentious act, unlike that affair when she looked like Bob Marley's witch doctor, this group of people looked so glamorous, so gorgeous. The ladies were absolutely beautiful and the men divinely handsome, and I really, really enjoyed the drama and the colour of their wardrobe, of their style, and also the general excitement and goodwill of the occasion, which was very nice and celebrated the warm relationship between the two countries and the strong dynamic partnership that they continue to forge. The royal family have always been proudly at the forefront of progressive relationships with the Commonwealth and far beyond. Obviously, the Commonwealth countries have a special place in our hearts here at the Kingdom and of the royal family, but of course far beyond the reaches of the Commonwealth too. So when I speak of the failure of multiculturalism, as I did in the last broadcast and a few previous broadcasts, I'm speaking of the dramatic pace of totally alien cultures arriving en masse. So that's something rather different to simple, harmonious integration over time. When I criticise and share my dismay with you, I'm certainly not talking about the natural blend of all nations as seen in my own family, within my own group of loved ones and peers and colleagues, and most of yours, I'm sure. And on that subject, an absolutely wonderful documentary came to my attention. You know that if you watch this channel, you know that I will often talk about things that have popped up on YouTube. I love going back in little time capsule moments, because we really do have, one of the reasons I adore YouTube to this day is that it is an incredible archive. There is so much, you know, it's hard to keep up sometimes, but tens and thousands of stuff from the past, relic material that people didn't think until the internet came along, the likes of YouTube, that would ever see the light of day again by even a handful of people, let alone millions of them. And it really is something to be looked at if you enjoy looking back at the past. I'm guilty of spending a bit too much time dwelling in the past, but that's the Cancerian nature in me. I'm trying to improve that part of my character and live a bit more in the present. But I do rather take some guilty pleasures in looking back, and all over the world, various bits and bobs, but of course, especially and particularly in the Kingdom and in London. And I've looked at plenty of archive material of Soho in the West End of London. And if you haven't been here, Soho is a very special place. I mean, it's losing its charm year on year after year after year, but especially during the post-war years, I suppose, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, it kind of went on a wonderful journey of being a very special, magical, mystical place in London. And I've watched lots of videos about it on YouTube, but one popped up and it is so vibrant, so glorious. I'll flash up the name of it and I'll add the link to this particular video in the description box if you fancy going to have a look at it. It's really worth it. And it's incredible to think that it's real life you're looking at and it's not a movie, because of the beauty of it, the beauty of the era. I think it was the 1956, did I write it? Yes, 1956. 70 years ago, you know, it feels like it's forever ago, but it's also a blink of the eye, isn't it? 70 years is not really anything. And, you know, Soho is one of my playgrounds, one of my great, you know, one of my, there are glimpses of one of my favourite pubs. I've told you about the French, which used to be known as, did I write this down? The York Minster. It was one in this. It was the York Minster, but it was always known as the French. And you know, it's wonderful to see it. The people there, you know, having a crafty cigarette outside, in exactly the same place where I still do. And one thing that I love seeing in all these things is everybody smoking. I do. I'm sorry, all you that hate smoking or want to or think that we're better off without it. We have lost something. We have lost something since it's been banned everywhere. It's wonderful to see them lighting up. You know, any smoker or ex-smoker, and I very seldom smoke these days, but for those that are curious, I do occasionally pick up a cigarette. I can tell you precisely how many I've had. This year I've had 2.5 packets. So, you know, I'm not going to worry about it, my dear. And if I drop dead, so what? You know, I enjoyed smoking every single one of them. But, you know, I've only had 2.5 packets this year. What's that? 50 cigarettes. And most of those have been just for the odd weekend or holiday away. But I don't sit here and smoke. But smoking added such a beauty to life, and I am aware of the dark side of it and everything, the sort of evil that it ushered in, but there is nothing like going into a place and instead of bringing out your mobile phone because you've got nothing to do, and you know, taking out a cigarette, and someone will be with you within 2 seconds offering you a light, and by the time you finish the cigarette you've got 2 or 3 new friends, 2 or 3 new pals. And yes, you can do that outside here and there, but something we've definitely lost, the social aspect and element of it, along with all of our pubs, which I think, you know, they're shutting in their hundreds every year. Some of that is due to the smoking ban, and it did provide a playground for all ages and a sense of community everywhere, whereas now they keep on the booze, but they buy it in and stay inside because it's too expensive, can't smoke, can't flirt with anybody, you'll be accused of being a racist, whatever you do, you know, all these kinds of things. So it's just, you know, yes, you'll probably end up, you know, if they do away with the whole arrangement without anybody dying from lung cancer or, you know, having any nasties or smelly fingernails and smelly breath, but you'll also lose a hell of a lot as well. Atmosphere, glamour, magical moments, naughty moments, and yes, a little bit of danger as well. The world doesn't have to be entirely anodyne, but I digress. Yes, I have rather an obsession with these kind of films. They pop up over YouTube. I was watching another documentary about Lionel Bart the other day in the East End of London, and all around, you know, the sort of old-fashioned district, bricklaying, this kind of thing. It was rather fascinating, the Jewish community. But what I tried to flash up in some of these pictures, and what you'll see if you go and watch this documentary, is the the mix. You know, Soho isn't representative of the whole country. It was a little tiny bubble. It kind of is in a sort of square shape in London, a tiny little pocket, a bubble of a few streets in the West End of London, but utterly magical. And as you can see, this is a 1956 in this country that we're told is so intolerant, so racist. This is 1956. You show me any other country in the entire world that can show you the kaleidoscope of nationalities, colours, creeds, religions, everybody here rubbing along very well together in the middle of London, in the heart of white old London. Fabulous, you know, black and white dancing together, romancing, socialising. And am I sitting here suggesting that everything was hunky-dory, that there was zero racism and that there weren't hard times? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So don't get it twisted. And you know, don't get up to all kinds of mischief. But what I am telling you is that there was certainly much joy, there was much harmony, and there was a gentle understanding. As we were, you know, there was immigration, Italian, Spanish, European, African, from the Arab nations, Chinese, from the Oriental nations. There was an immigration, but in those times, for the most part, aside from a couple of flurries, a lot gentler. There was more time for everybody to acclimatise and for various frictions to be ironed out over time. And this is why it's so upsetting to many of us to hear the aspersions cast against this kingdom by mischief makers that actually want to cause trouble for no reason. Because even back in 1956, we had begun getting it right. Do you see? Begun getting it right on this nation, this empire that actually was the first, as far as I believe, someone will probably prove me wrong, but to, you know, stand up for abolishing slavery, even though it had a very regrettable involvement in it, as most empires did, including, you know, the ones from Africa and the Ottomans, any other empire you can think of. We were the ones that wanted it abolished, and we didn't have those kind of segregations here. We didn't have those kind of segregation. You know, it was a hard knife for anybody. Hard knock. Did I say knife? Life for anybody if you weren't rich and upper crust, to be quite honest with you, whether you was black as ebony or white as snow. It was a hard knock life in the Victorian age, even in this Carolean age, to be dirt poor or to be not so fancy. A hard knock life. It's not as if they were all sailing and cruising along in the workhouses like Oliver fucking Twist. Do you know what I mean, my dear? You know, let's give us all a break. And I'm not trying to equate that sort of hardship with slavery, but I am just trying to make the point that in many ways there were different kinds of enslavements and a lot of poverty and hardship for everybody in ancient times. So, you know, let's pull our socks up. Let's start getting a bit of reason and a bit of rationale and a bit of balance. Because the sad twist to the tale is that treasure chest compartment of society that you see in a place like Soho, that openness, that tolerance that you see, seems to have come at a price, doesn't it? It seems to have come at a price because it's been taken advantage of and also not cherished enough by those here and those who are supposed to protect it. Time marches on. Time marches on. That magnificent era that we see there was just a wrinkle in time, but what a glorious wrinkle it was. Glorious. And on the subject of wrinkles, let's turn to Meghan Markle again, because one of her fans, one of Charlie's angels, has popped up. Yes, Destiny's Child is recruiting a new member. They don't want Michelle anymore. They want Duchess of Sussex, don't they, Meghan? Because Beyonce's been singing her praises again and again, saying that she was, you know, sort of divinely sent for genetic pain or whatever it is. And now Kelly Rowland, old smelly Kelly, now she's popping in to tell us about the new Charlie's Angels, or new Tyler's Angels, maybe, old Tyler Perry. But certainly not King Charles's angel. Can we please get that established? Kelly Rowland has told Hello magazine that when she met Meghan recently at the Beyoncé gig, it was my first time meeting her. It was just nice being there with other great women and just being able to simply talk. I don't know what people expect to see or know, but Meghan just felt very cool and very down to earth. She is very warm. So she's cool and warm? Make your mind up, dear. Very warm. Yeah, we hear this a lot about her, don't we? Very warm. Like a puddle of urine? Yeah. We can all give the old warm charm offensive if we want, can't we, dear? Try and leap into your arms just as Meghan tried to leap into Catherine's arms through the door at Kensington Palace on first visit. Hi! Hold on there, love. Oh, please, let's just have a hug. We're going to be sisters. Can I borrow your lip gloss? Stay away. Well, you might fall for it, Kelly Rowland, but our future Queen Catherine did not. She had the number immediately. So she's cool and warm, and she was royal before she was in that family, Kelly Rowland tells us. That family? Oh, that's Harry's family you're talking about. I think that we are royalty before anything, and we have to hold ourselves in that regard as humans, as people, she says. Well, I suppose you could say that we chime. We chime there because I'm always telling you, aren't I, my dear, to channel the royal spirit. So if she was saying that I wouldn't object, but it depends what you consider royal behaviour. If you're going to suggest that we're all born royal and we don't need a royal title, and she's doing her Earl Spencer. Humility, decency, that is what is royal, as exemplified by the late Queen Elizabeth. And as the current King Charles is doing a very good job of trying to emulate in his own special way. It's about humility and decency and goodness. That's what royalty is about. It's not about a sort of jejune, arrogant, diva-esque fashion. You know, it's not about being a diva and being arrogant and a finger snap. I'm a queen. I'm a queen. And can you imagine our darling true Lilibet behaving in such a manner? No, it is about a quiet modesty and a spirited approach to life and an inner confidence based on a certain faith in goodness. It is not about, I'm a queen, you know, I'm just going to jiggle it all about and tell you what's key because it's my blood right. I don't need a royal title. I'm a queen. You know, I'm a soldier. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. And don't tell me that something obscene is ever going to be a queen. But also, in telling us what Kelly Rowland has chosen to share with us, it also reveals something rather interesting, which is the fact that Meghan Markle is extremely forgettable, completely forgettable, because she might have told this interviewer that it was the first time she ever met Meghan Markle, but she's actually mistaken because she met Meghan Markle in 2014, where a photograph was shared. I think it was shared either on the TIG and the Instagram. I think both of them actually, my dear. It was shared by Meghan herself, together with the stylist Josie. New York Fashion Week. She pushed out that photo all those years ago, no doubt for bragging rights and for clout. Why else post the thing? But that's what she did. And she tagged it NYFW for the Fashion Week and grateful. Hashtag grateful. Ooh, how cringe, how cringe and so terribly LA. Grateful. If any of my friends, not they would, but if any of my associates ever hashtagged themselves grateful, then they would be on the outs, my dear, on the outs, and I'd be very grateful to see the back of them. I just wouldn't put up with it. And she tagged Kelly Rowland, who evidently didn't get the memo, didn't notice the tag, and didn't remember it from Adam. Didn't remember it at all. So that was quite satisfying. And Also, by the way, something else popped up. Things are always popping up on one's computer, aren't they, my dear, or on one's phone. It's like, what is it they call it? Whack-a-mole. But something popped up, and to begin with, I thought that this face was Megan. I thought it was Megan popping up. I had to put on my spectacles and have a good squint. But then I realised that what I'm seeing on the screen was actually slightly more attractive than Megan, so it wasn't her. But it's because I'd seen this thing pop up, and I saw the word Sussex next to it. Actually, East Sussex. This is the beachy head woman. And please don't try giving head on a beach, by the way. Don't bother doing that. You'll get sand between your windbreakers, my dear. So I digress. The BBC plaque that you see celebrated the first Black Briton, honouring the 1,800-year-old remains that had been found of somebody. They erected this plaque in an East Sussex village as part of a 2016 British and Black documentary. British and Black. And guess who was hosting it and who was telling us that these remains of the person were a Black Briton? Because if you haven't noticed, there's a big push all over the place to tell everybody that really this was a Black kingdom inherited by white people. Anyway, this was that professor that we see on all the Markle material, Professor David Olusoga. And he was trying to convince everybody on this documentary that this Black Briton was there way before anybody else, 1800 years ago. So they had a plaque installed in East Sussex celebrating the fact, which would have been all very well and good, I'm sure, but that was until there was recent DNA analysis. And as it turns out, aside from the fact that this young lady grew up in Eastbourne, she was of Cypriot origin. She was born in Cyprus, love, not Africa, as said. So, the plaque has had to be removed. An embarrassing mistake for the BBC and the professor and all these so-called experts of history. And speaking of mistakes, well, I have to mention this because in the last broadcast I mentioned Lady Glenconner, and she claimed that when she chatted with John Kerry at the coronation, was it? Or the late Queen's funeral? The coronation, that he had told her that he felt sorry for Prince Harry. Well, I have to make this correction because his people have come forward to make a statement saying Secretary Kerry does not remember being asked that question by Lady Glenconner. But as a father in the public eye himself, he has nothing but empathy for people working through a family matter who deserve all privacy and compassion. Deserves privacy? I'm sorry, have you been privy to the I Want Privacy tour carried out by that Harkle family over the last 3-4 years? Where have you been? Compassion? Okay, yeah, we can debate that and throw that around. But privacy? Oh, John Kerry, I don't know. But, in the spirit of fairness and accuracy, I must include that blowback to Lady Glenconner. John Kerry denies saying it. Well, maybe she didn't have her hearing aid turned up. Who knows? I'm not going to play umpire there, but what I will say is that I thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. Do leave me a nice juicy comment, and if you enjoyed the show, my tip jar is in the description box. So if you'd like to treat me to a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with a slice of lemon, I take an Earl Grey with lemon, you see. Sometimes a little bit of honey. And a slice of cake. I'm getting carried away. I'll see you next time, my dears. Take care, lots of love, and toodle pip. Toodle pip, my dears.